Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Induction Healthcare Group final results for the year ending 31st of March 2021 investor presentation. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Thank you for those that responded to the poll, and if I could ask those of you yet to respond, if you could just give that your kind attention, we would be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand over to Ollie Drake, CFO, and James Balmain, CEO from Induction Healthcare. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. And hello to everybody. And thank you very much for taking the time to come and attend our results presentation. I'm James. I'm the Group CEO.
Ollie Drake. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting alongside James.
Great. Thanks, Ollie. So Ollie and I are going to go off camera now to give the presentation a bit more space. But we'll come back on camera when the Q&A starts, so you can look at how lovely we are when we get to the end of the presentation. Thanks. So, kicking off, what I think it's helpful to do is just spend a couple of slides, going back to basics and framing, who we are, Induction, what we care about, and where we're going as a business. We fundamentally are a flexible care platform. We have a number of products that we're bringing together to solve some key problems in healthcare. We are a buy and build business, so our strategy is to build our own stuff and acquire other companies. But we're not just looking to acquire things, integrate them, and benefit from their revenue. We absolutely want to deliver an enhanced performance, organic growth on top of the things we buy and we bring together. And the final point I'd make about flexible care, the word flexible is a deliberate choice for us. We don't think of ourselves as a virtual care platform. We spend a lot of time working with our hospital customers. And I think we instinctively across the organization understand that things like face-to-face consultations with doctors and nurses are still going to take place. And they have a very real place, in a modern world delivering healthcare. So that flexibility is a really, important concept for us that we all, as a group of people, buy into. So I'm going to jump forwards and just spend a couple of slides talking about our products. At a basic level, we really work hard to make our solutions simple. And we're proud of the fact we've got some really, really strong user numbers, and we're proud of the fact that we make products that both our clinical teams and our patient users choose to use. And that usability is at the core of everything we're trying to do. And I think we'll continue to deliver success for the group. Now, if you think about our products, on the left-hand side of this slide, you've got our two apps that are used by clinical teams. The first one, Switch, is primarily a directory app. So when when doctors rotate into a new hospital, one of the first things they normally get told to do is go to the App Store and download the Switch app. It's a crowdsourced directory of everybody in the hospital's contact details, bleep numbers, extension numbers, and it allows care teams to communicate with each other without going via the hospital switchboard. And when hospitals get busy, the switchboard wait times can be quite long, so it's a real time saver. And that simplicity has driven it to 239,000 clinical users around the world. The vast majority of those users work in English NHS hospitals, and that user growth has been really phenomenal, over the last couple of years. Moving on to our other clinical app, Guidance. Think of that as Dropbox for doctors. So care teams are issued clinical guidance, and that guidance is issued at a local level. So each hospital will have its own individual guidance. A simple example of that would be the rules around prescribing antibiotics. Now, historically, that's been a paper-based system. What Guidance does is it digitizes all of that, and it creates a local copy in the doctor's pocket, in the nurse's pocket, that also works critically offline. So you don't need an internet connection for Guidance to work. And again, widely used, and we monetize that app at around £5,000 per hospital per year, and we've seen some quite good, revenue growth post acquisition for Guidance. On the right-hand side of the slide, you've got our patient-facing platforms. Induction Zesty is a patient portal. Think of that as the digital front door to a hospital if you're a patient. And we've seen, again, strong growth in user uptake. We're at just over 300,000 registered patients. We're signing new patients up onto the platform at the various hospitals where it's live at around 30,000 patients a month now. And, you know, we expect, you know, this category of technology in healthcare to really begin to grow now as hospitals, you know, around the world begin to realize that that digital patient engagement is critical to delivering care more efficiently and more cheaply. And then finally, post-period end, we acquired an Australian company called Attend Anywhere. It is a video consultation platform. It's nationally contracted in Wales, Scotland, and the Republic of Ireland. And it has a very, very large market share in England. So it's absolutely the dominant video consultation platform across the British Isles for hospitals doing video-based consultations with patients. So really, really exciting acquisition, the biggest one we've ever made, and sits right in the center of our flexible care strategy. And then the final product line I want to talk about is something we call HealthStream. And that's our proprietary integration engine. And another way to think about it is as our secret sauce. We absolutely see the value in standalone solutions, but when you can take those solutions and you can integrate them into the systems that hospitals use day to day, normally, you know, we would talk about the electronic patient record. That integration creates a really defendable position for our products. And adds, you know, an enormous amount of value versus a product that doesn't talk to the underlying systems. So the general direction of travel, which I will cover on the next slide, is whilst these products absolutely add value in their own right, we're working really, really hard to bring them together into one cohesive platform. And I think the way to think about that and the way to think about the problem that we solve as a business is to think about the journey that a patient takes through hospital. And a simple way to conceptualize that is to think about it is in 3 stages. What happens to them during referral, before they actually have their consultation, the consultation itself and how that works, and then the follow-up care. And whilst it absolutely can be a linear process, for example, if you break your arm, you get an appointment, you go, you get treated, you know, there might be a little bit of follow-up care and then you're discharged. For an awful lot of people who visit hospital, particularly those who suffer from a chronic condition, it's actually helpful to think about their journey as circular, because some of them, sadly, you know, they don't ever get discharged. So they're constantly being monitored remotely and attending follow-up appointments. And that follow-up space is very, very expensive currently for health systems around the world. So one of the areas where our technology can be really, really helpful is to streamline that follow-up process, to make it more efficient, to try and do more stuff remotely, thereby reducing the cost and actually at the same time increasing patient satisfaction and delivering better outcomes. So you can see that before our Zesty and our Switch products play a role. During, absolutely Attend Anywhere is a really dominant force in video consultations, and we'll be launching telephone very soon, so we'll have the full mix. But our Zesty and our Switch platforms also provide you know, direct benefit. And then in the follow-up space, that gap between a patient finishing their consultation, finishing their treatment, and either being discharged or having to come back and repeat the process, we're seeing really strong growth and traction with our Zesty guidance and Switch platforms in helping, you know, care teams and patients along that journey. So bringing those platforms together as one cohesive solution to deliver this flexible care platform across the entire care pathway is really what Induction as a business is all about. And I think it's helpful just to talk about kind of what grounds us as a company. I'm incredibly fortunate in that I work with a really amazing group of people who are all very driven by, you know, the vision we have, the mission we're on, and our sense of purpose. You know, we're absolutely seeing tangible evidence that we're attracting, you know, we're punching above our weight, we're attracting some really, really good talent to the business at the moment. And, you know, time and time again, we're told it's because we have this sense of purpose, we're doing something good. So it is genuinely something that's really, really important to us as a business. as opposed to, you know, a bumper sticker or whatever. So when we think about our vision, we're absolutely locked into this idea of having helped 30 million patients by 2025. And we're quite a long way on that journey already. You know, it's a big goal for us, but it is achievable. If you think about our Attend Anywhere platform as an example, that's already processed, you know, several million video consultations with unique patients. So there's a lot of work to do, but that's what we aim at. That's our vision of where we want to get to in this phase. And then really, I've talked about flexible care. We really truly believe that the future of healthcare is flexibility. You know, the ability for care teams and patients to pick the right mode of care, you know, be that by message, be that face-to-face, be that on video, be that on the telephone. And so it's our mission to get our flexible care platform used by every doctor, every nurse, and every patient at all of the critical points across that care pathway. And then finally, you know, we're part of an ecosystem that's gaining really significant momentum. It's been absolutely pushed along in terms of mind share as a result of the COVID pandemic, and we're driving the evolution of how care is delivered and experienced. And I think that final purpose is really what gets us out of bed in the morning, and really what makes induction somewhere that a lot of people, you know, want to work at, which I think is very important. So moving on to our the highlights from past financial year FY21. We very much think of this as a foundation year. We made really strong progress on it was our first full year of revenue, so we made strong progress there. We saw a near over a 900% rise in reported revenue to £1.5 million. Critically, also, we saw a 336% growth in recurring revenues, and it's recurring revenues as a business that we really care about. If we think about our product lines, Induction Zesty saw 176% growth in new patient registrations, and we had 3 key new go-lives at major hospitals during the period. And this was actually a really big achievement when you consider that throughout much of this period, hospitals were under significant pressure because of the COVID pandemic. So their ability to focus on really anything else was really constrained. If we think about our clinical apps, Switch and Guidance, both of them saw really strong user growth. And actually, both in the English market particularly, you know, are now approaching total market coverage, which is actually really rare for a technology platform in healthcare. It tends to be, you know, usage does tend to be quite fragmented. And then finally, and almost sort of most importantly in terms of delivering against our longer term strategy, we earned preferred supplier status with the South West London Integrated Care System for our Zesty patient portal. And it's worth pointing out that our Attend Anywhere platform is also the incumbent provider for video consultations in that same region. And integrated care systems is absolutely the direction of travel for where the English NHS is going. So to win, you know, pretty much the first one that's come out, I think is a really important strategic milestone for the business. And then if we think about how we executed against our buy and build strategy during the period, we completed the acquisition of Zesty in June, and that was important because it was the first platform that added a patient-facing capability to our product suite. We signed a value-added reseller agreement with the Cerner Corporation, and they're one of the largest health IT companies in the world. And Induction Zesty is currently the only patient portal that's partnered with Cerner. And Cerner are now selling our joint Zesty Cerner product in place of their old existing product. So it's a you know, that's a big win, and we very much hope will be a strong driver of performance for the remainder of this year and next year and beyond. We worked with Apple and Cerner at Milton Keynes Hospital on the launch of health records on iPhone. And again, important because we're the only company to have done that, to have worked with Apple in this market in the UK. And that's important, not so much for direct revenue. It's not a service Apple charges for. But now if customers want to give health records on iPhone to their patients, you know, they can get that when they partner with the right EPR vendor and Induction. So another feather in our cap. And then finally, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in a couple of slides' time, we post-period end, we completed, our biggest acquisition to date, the Attend Anywhere, supported by a £25 million fundraise that we did post period end. So I'm going to hand over to Ollie, who's going to take us through a financial review of FY21.
Thanks, James. So I'm going to talk through the financial highlights for the year to 31st of March 2021. So as James has mentioned, group revenues ended up at just over 1.5 million, which was up from £148,000 in the prior year. This increase has been driven from two areas. Induction Guidance, which was acquired in November 2019, saw its revenues increase to £636,000. It is worth noting that this represented 12 months of trading compared to 5 months in the prior year post-acquisition. However, Guidance did see a 79% increase in monthly revenues year on year, which was driven in itself from upselling to existing customers new product lines and a growth in international sales. The second reason for the increase in group revenues, as James has pointed out, was the Zesty acquisition, which was acquired in June of 2020 and delivered almost £900,000 in revenues in the 9.5 months post-acquisition. Loss before interest, tax, depreciation and exceptionals was 4.8 million, which was up from 2.7 million in the prior year. This increase was driven both from the Zesty acquisition, which was loss-making in the period, and further investment in the development and central support teams. Induction Switch has seen some sales traction post-year end, and as James has pointed out in the previous slide, increased it in its user numbers with 57% year-on-year growth. However, I'm sure everybody is aware that FY21 was a challenging year for everyone, and especially the healthcare providers, who were naturally focused on COVID priorities and unable to spare much bandwidth for monetization discussions on Induction Switch. As a result, the board looked at the year-end 5-year forecast for Induction Switch in the annual impairment review at the year-end and concluded that the value of goodwill and intangibles on its balance sheet should be impaired by 1.37 million. So this was an adjustment to our balance sheet of almost 1.4 million, but a non-cash item. I think it's important to note, though, that the group sees great value in Induction Switch's user base and can see further monetization of this product this financial year. But the group's short-term strategy is to focus attention and investment on higher value revenue streams, which in turn complement and support the Induction Switch user base. Sorry, my mobile. So on to cash. We ended the year with cash of 2.5 million, and I will talk about the current cash position in the next slide, which moves me nicely on to post-period highlights. Obviously, James has mentioned the £25 million fundraise and the acquisition of Attend Anywhere in June of this year. And to give some highlights to Attend Anywhere for those that don't know too much about it, it delivered 10.4 million in revenues and 4.5 million in EBITDA in the 12 months to 30th of June 2021. So it's a really sort of transformative revenue position for us as a group, as well as its contractual base, as it holds contracts, as James mentioned, with NHS Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and over 180 English NHS trusts. So really will be transformational for us. But aside from that, we've seen strong sales momentum post-year end. 3 hospital groups across South East England have contracted to deploy Induction Zesty, worth a total of £440,000 with contract terms of between 12 and 20 months. Post-acquisition, NHS Wales renewed its existing contract with Induction Attend Anywhere in July of 2021 at 1.63 million, which was up from 1.2 million in the previous 12 months. And James has already touched on the preferred supplier status with South West London as well. So where does that take us in the trading in the year to date for FY22? So in the 5 months to August 2021, we've seen unaudited revenues of £3.5 million and have a visibility of £7.5 million in contracted revenues for the final 7 months of FY 2022. So that is 11 million of contracted and recognised revenues, and any new business will just go on top of those numbers. Cash at the end of August stood at 13.6 million, which is reflective of both invoicing in advance across the group and the additional working capital raised off the back of the Attend Anywhere acquisition through the fundraise. And the board's expectations for the remainder of FY22 are unchanged and in line with guidance provided by our brokers, Singers. And for those that have not seen this, Singers issued guidance of revenues of around 12.2 million and 2.1 million in loss before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, and acquisition fundraise costs. So I'm now going to hand back to James, who's going to summarise and talk through a little bit about the investment case. Thank you.
Brilliant. Hey, thank you, Ollie. And we got some good questions coming through, which is really helpful and a good thing to see. I'll round out by just sort of summing up how we view the investment case. Firstly, we are now, particularly in post the acquisition of Attend Anywhere, in a really good, established and defendable market position. Attend Anywhere is clearly, pretty much the national standard throughout England, which is a fairly big market, and it's obviously nationally contracted across most of the rest of the British Isles. So that's a really, really transformational acquisition for us. Again, just touching on this preferred supplier status. This theme of ICSs for companies like Induction, particularly for us actually with our product range, is a very important theme. Our prediction is absolutely that when the ICSs are fully formed and they become legal bodies on the 1st of April next year, for the first time each ICS is going to have centrally provided funding for technology. There is a tech fund. There's a huge driver on waiting list reduction, and technology is going to play a key part of that. So that direction of travel, that integration, that comprehensive flexible care platform vision has already getting traction with ICSs before they're even formed, which I think is hugely encouraging. And then finally, obviously our partnerships, which we touched on earlier on, but again, structurally they give us quite a big advantage in the market. Again, thinking about the position we're in now versus where we were 2 years ago, we've now got good, strong financial fundamentals. We've got good forward visibility on pre-contracted revenue. We tend to sign we're seeing a shift towards contracts with a multiple year term, and it's usual for us to be paid at the start of the contract term or annually in advance, which obviously gives us a benefit in terms of cash flow. Thinking about the overall market and kind of what's driving growth. I mean, again, we've talked about the move to integrated care systems. I've talked already about this real focus on technology and money being made available, and understanding, particularly in a centralized market like the NHS, understanding how the money flows is absolutely key. I think to being successful in this space. So central funding is very, very important. Again, waitlist recovery I've talked about. I'm sure everyone will have noticed, the rise in national insurance charges. A lot of that money, certainly for the foreseeable future, is actually going to go into health, and it's absolutely targeting, reducing waiting lists. Now, fundamentally, we have a capacity problem, but technology still has, a very a vital role to play in reducing waiting lists. And then finally, we're quite excited about the opportunities in non-health public sector. Conceptually, our technology allows consultations between professionals and either patients or citizens, and we think there's some really exciting scope ahead of us to take parts of our technology, particularly our Attend Anywhere platform, and gain some sales momentum in other public sector non-health markets. And then finally, we're still very much on a buy and build journey. we're constantly developing our M&A pipeline, and particularly when we think about our desire to cross borders, which is another very key strategic point for us. We see M&A as a very valuable route into new markets where we can leverage our scale to acquire smaller businesses that already have a contracting footprint and a viable solution with proven product market fit in other markets. So I think that wraps up the slides part of today. I'll go back on video. Ollie, if you can do the same.
That's great, James. Let me just give you a few moments whilst you do that. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while James and I take a few moments to review those investor questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and we will send you an email when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company, and immediately after the presentation's ended, you'll be redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. It's not a very long while to give you time to look through the Q&A, guys, but I am mindful that you've got a number of questions that are there for you from investors. So firstly, thank you to everybody that has submitted those questions into the guys. And perhaps if I could just hand back to you to manage through these, if I could ask you to read out the questions and give a response where it's appropriate to do so, that'd be great.
Yeah, Ollie, do you want to read out Michael?
Yeah. Can you talk about the adoption of the platform by hospital and trusts? How do you sell into these organizations, i.e. directly or through partner channels? What's the sales cycle and what lengths of contracts do they sign up to?
So, Michael, firstly, thank you. It's a really good question. I'm going to try and give you a concise answer because it would be really nice if it was always the same. But largely, we sell direct. We do have Attend Anywhere does have a very good channel partner for sales, company called Involve. And we also sell in via partners. So the obvious one where we actually have a formal value-added reseller agreement is Cerner. But we're also, either bidding behind or alongside other major players in the UK market. So System C would be a good example where we have bid and won on work in the past and will continue to bid with them as a partner. So I think the channel to market is direct and channel partners. The sales cycle can be really, really variable. We've had, generally, selling into hospitals or selling into public sector is slow. So I would never characterize the sales cycle as quick. We've had larger deals that have taken, 6 to 9 months is not unusual for some of these larger regional deals. With things like Attend Anywhere, the sales cycle is already predetermined. So, we have contracts that vary in term where the expiration date is known. And those, because this is kind of core infrastructure, those contracted bodies will start to, come back to us sometimes 6-8 months before contract expiry to begin the process of re-procurement. And I think there's a really interesting point that I'd like to make on this. There is, in my mind, a huge difference between being the incumbent provider where you are renewing an existing contract and having to go into a hospital or a region and sell something new. And certainly, our experience to date has been that the sales cycle and therefore the predictability of revenue is far more mechanical and repeatable in a world where you're renewing existing contracts than it is trying to do greenfield sales. The big X factor, candidly, is when the ICSs come online properly and they get funded at the start of next financial year, so April next year. There's still our expectation is some will be ahead of the game, will be out in the market quite quickly. I mean, Southwest London is a good example of an ICS that's actually procured something before it's even properly formed. But we can absolutely expect a tail of ICSs where it's going to take them longer to set their digital strategy and come to market. So in terms of that sales cycle, that's probably the biggest unknown for us right now.
And James, can you just touch on the adoption levels from the hospital and trust? Michael's first part of the question.
Yeah, no, apologies. So once it's gone in, adoption of our clinical platforms, so switch and guidance is very high. we see very, very high daily, weekly and monthly usage numbers relative to the overall number of registered users. The key metric we look at for our Zesty platform, there's two actually. The first is, the standard daily, monthly active users, and we have a fairly high, high relationship between daily and monthly active users versus total registrations. But it is sometimes event driven, so people don't tend to come and use, their hospital portal, to look up things or for information. They tend to use it, in response to an event. So there is an appointment they can manage, there is a letter they can read. But again, we see good engagement. The key statistic for Zesty is the registration rate. And the one that we look at is the number of people who register versus the number of people who we invite. And we consistently see between 60 and 70% of patients that are invited register, which we think is really high, and certainly the market agrees with us. In terms of attend anywhere, overall usage is huge, into millions of consultations a year. I think at the moment we're doing, at least sort of 8,000 to 9,000 consultations a day, just across the English NHS. And in terms of usage, when you look at our biggest market, which currently is England, we have defined pockets of kind of super usage where those providers have, it's clicked. They've understood that Attend Anywhere is a platform, that can do virtual consulting at scale. We then have a group of hospitals in the middle of the usage spectrum who are still using the platform, really quite a bit, but they haven't completely kind of embedded, that flexible consultation, model into their workflow. And then we obviously have a third bucket of users who are really quite sporadic, and don't use it as much as we would like them to. And one of the key things that we're working on right now is to kind of drive that usage and to work with those hospitals, to get the people who are really using it and are actually becoming super advocates to kind of tell their story to those people in that third bucket who aren't using it as much as we would like them to.
Thank you. Quite a common question that probably comes in: what's the difference between Attend Anywhere and Teams or Zoom?
So there are a number of differences. One of the sort of more obvious ones is just security. So if you think about how Teams and Zoom work, whilst the traffic can be encrypted, it's bounced via a central server, whereas Attend Anywhere is encrypted peer-to-peer. So the video consultation stream is not stored anywhere. But the really big difference is slightly more conceptual. It's the difference between conferencing and consulting. So if you think about Zoom or Teams, they are business conferencing tools, and they're what we call slot-based. So a group of people put a time in the diary, somebody sends an invite out, and that group of people turn up and they have a video call, a video conference at a prescribed time. Now, if you think about how an outpatients department works in a hospital, it just doesn't work that way. A bunch of patients turn up to the waiting area, and they're called in a kind of next cab off the rank paradigm. There'll be a group of doctors and registrars who will be treating a group of patients. So that concept of the waiting area, that concept of each patient not having a defined slot, and that concept of the care teams treating the patients having the control in saying, I'm going to see James next, then Ollie, it is a really, really key fundamental difference. And what we've got, absolute empirical evidence for, particularly with Attend Anywhere, and one of the things we find so exciting about the platform is it clearly works at scale. So there are a few hospitals still who are using, Teams or other, video platforms, and they're doing, ad hoc consultations. But the hospitals that are really flying and really doing an awful lot of video-based care, they've embraced the waiting area model, and the virtual waiting areas are mimicking, the physical waiting areas that they have in hospital.
Next one. How do you see the NHS market evolving, and how does this fit with Induction's strategy? We sort of touched on this a bit.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered this. I think the English NHS market is absolutely about to be driven by integrated care systems. And I think, for the first time, they're going to have money. It's absolutely our strategy, certainly here in England, that, we bring our products together and we have a compelling product capability that matches the requirements that we know ICSs have.
Great. Do you have any plans for international expansion?
Yes, we do. Obviously, good 50% of our team is based in Australia. So Attend Anywhere is an Australian company with offices and their team based in Melbourne. We're actively looking to develop the Australian market right now. And a big part of our deal pipeline for M&A is looking at acquisitions that we can make that will take us into new territories. We think it's absolutely, in terms of returning value to shareholders, in terms of, how our business is valued, we don't want to be a single marketplace. So we're very, very focused, in a structured, controlled expansion into new territories.
Okay. Next question. Is the integration of Attend Anywhere complete? Have you retained the key personnel in the business? Are they locked in?
Yes. So the integration of Attend Anywhere in a business sense, so joining our processes up, achieving efficiencies is ongoing. It's obviously challenging, the company based in Australia, etc. So it's a very big time zone difference. We've made really, really good, strong progress on integration. The core business integration in terms of, unified legal, unified accounting, internal team communication, etc. All of the key milestones there are now complete, and we've done that, relatively efficiently and quickly. And what's ongoing is building out our market-facing teams to kind of match the Attend Anywhere capability. And I wouldn't really actually classify that task as integration, because one of the motivations that the Attend Anywhere team had in doing the acquisition with us is they didn't have a market-facing presence in the UK. So that's the final piece of the jigsaw for us, is completing, our customer success and our account management hires. We're well on the way with that, so that we've got a good, strong market-facing team. And in terms of retaining personnel, absolutely, Attend Anywhere is they've got some fantastic people, but the key person there is the founder, Chris Ryan's a fantastic guy, and he has become a really huge shareholder. So he's not subject to a lock-in. He's not on an earn-out, but he's a very big shareholder in Induction, so he's obviously is motivated to stay and to achieve value in his equity holding in the business.
Thank you. You mentioned M&A. How would you see funding any transaction? Are there any complementary areas that you would look at?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things we think is key to executing a successful M&A strategy is being opportunistic and having a bit of flexibility. At the moment, I think for now, funding acquisitions in the near term, so in the next 12 to 18 months, we would look to do either an acquisition for paper, or we would look to raise additional money for acquisitions in the market via the sale of equity. In the more medium term, we do want to get to the position where the business is generating cash, and we are able to leverage more cost-effective funding methods. For debt would be a good example of that. So I would think that I would hope anyway that debt will be in the mix for near-term future acquisitions that we may be considering doing. And in terms of complementary areas, there are quite a few. I think that the key thing for us is to retain focus on our flexible care vision. There are so many pain points along that care pathway that even whilst retaining that focus, there are a number of acquisitions that could enhance our product capability, and we're absolutely not discounting those. But we're not specifically focused on going out to make more acquisitions that enhance our product capability. Candidly, we're much more focused on looking at acquisitions that will take us into new territories.
Thank you. Next one from Michael. How big is your internal sales force?
So our internal sales force at the moment is 5 people. We have an active partnership with a channel reseller who are very familiar with the particularly the English NHS market, but other markets too. And they have 22 people, and they're helping us cover the ground in the short and the medium term with Attend Anywhere. Our ambition is absolutely to build an internal capability. Again, going back to one of the points I made previously, in the UK market, actually things like customer success and account management are actually more important to us currently, than new sales. So we will always have a new sales team, particularly to manage the emerging requirement from integrated care systems. But we're finding increasingly that we're being pulled into conversations around new platform procurement, the move to ICSs, because we hold a number of quite substantial existing contracts.
Thank you. The next one. I'm not sure I quite understand this one, but maybe you will, James. Are you talking periodic system inductions, rebidding of the systems with users so that usage increases? We might need to clarify.
Yeah.
Russell, if you'd like to clarify.
Yeah, I'm not, apologies, Russell, sure I quite understand that one.
James, Ollie, don't worry. What we'll do is if Russell resubmits that question, what we'll do is we'll make that available to you after today's event, and you'll have the opportunity to review and give a response if it's appropriate to do so. In the event that there aren't any other questions, and you've taken every question that's been submitted, so thank you for that, and thank you for the investors that have submitted those questions. Perhaps, James, I could just hand back to you for a few. I don't know if that makes any.
I can have a stab at it. So I think what we're talking about here is we're talking about, are we focused on increasing usage? So usage of our products by users, be they clinical teams or patients. Absolutely. Good, great. Thanks, Russell. Absolutely. So there's a whole number of things we're doing. So, and we do this as a business as usual cycle, actually. So we pay, we capture, a fair amount of completely anonymized analytics, and we look at that usage data, and that helps us, inform future versions of our products. We also kind of invite both patients and clinical teams to attend a number of events. Most of them obviously recently have been virtual, where we capture that live feedback. And the final thing we do is we work in partnership with a few of our key hospital partners, so that they can kind of inform the design process, and we can go through a fairly kind of rapid, iteration from a minimum viable product to a first to a second release candidate. So rather than having a team that goes away and builds a finished product and then publishes it, we like to get smaller, tighter things out that might even, have limited functionality. We'd like to get them into the wild and see them being used more quickly, which I think, to be fair, is a fairly common trend in software development these days. It's not something unique that Induction's doing. But yeah, we're really, really focused on user satisfaction, on repeat usage, but equally, we're not, it's important to point out that, we're not sort of, an advertising platform who would care about, time on site, time on app, impressions served, that kind of stuff. We're much more focused on making sure that our users were able to complete their tasks. That's the big thing for us. Do you want to take that one, Ollie?
Yeah, a question from Andrew. What is the revenue forecast for the current financial year? We can't publish or forward-looking guidance. As I mentioned, Singers, our brokers, have given some guidance of our revenue for FY22, and their guidance was revenues up north of £12 million. But we can't give forward-looking guidance. We are in line with guidance as we stand.
James, Ollie, thank you very much indeed. As I said, undoubtedly, as soon as I start talking, another question will come in. But if that does happen, obviously, I'll make those available to you after today's event. I guess I know investor feedback's important. I'll shortly redirect investors to give you their thoughts and expectations. But James, perhaps before doing so, I could just hand back to you just for a few closing comments.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. I mean, I think what I would say is, Excluding Attend Anywhere, that's obviously been, a huge, net beneficiary of the rapid move to needing to do, consultations remotely. Induction as a company has seen some really solid progress, during FY21, in what's been a really challenging year, for healthcare. And I think there are some companies, particularly in primary care, that have done incredibly well because of the COVID pandemic. And I obviously need to be careful in associating people doing well with a global pandemic, but thinking purely in terms of, their business and their performance. But secondary care, really has had, hospitals have had a tough time, and it's been very difficult to get their attention. So through that lens, I'm really, really happy with the performance, particularly of our applications other than Attend Anywhere, which we bought post-period end. When I look forwards, I think there's an enormous opportunity ahead of us. We can absolutely see the provision of care needing to include that flexibility. Digital is now front and center in a way that, throughout my entire career in healthcare, I've never seen it, get this much focus. Money is now beginning to be made available to cover these initiatives. And critically, we're seeing a direct link between the impact of digital and the effect it's having on delivery of healthcare, both in terms of patient outcomes and in terms of saving money. And a lot of that is, if you think about the effect the pandemic's had on the delivery of health, it's acted as a sort of massive catalyst to the usage of digital products. So in a way that we really didn't have before COVID, we've now got huge volumes of data coming out saying this stuff works. So I think Induction is, obviously I would say this being the CEO, but I think Induction is a very exciting business with some really capable people in a really exciting sector.
James, Ollie, thank you once again for updating investors this afternoon.
Right.
Please could I ask investors not to close this session, as we will now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Induction Healthcare Group, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, and good afternoon to you all.